The Barefoot Punter, because statistics are the best. The Barefoot Punter, because you don't need footwear to bet.
Welcome back to the Barefoot Punter. I'm your host today, The Mug, your co-host, The Logical One. We take our inspiration from the Barefoot Investor, but instead of giving you investment advice, we're here to give you a bit of betting advice on the AFL and NRL 2001 season. And it's a big welcome back to the program to The Logical One. And Logical, the jingle is back.
Oh, the punters have spoken. For a bit of context, there's been a bit happening on that during the week. And I had a couple of really loyal listeners on the show text to me during the week, and they said, we want the jingle back. And so we had a bit of text and going toing and froing with the group. And Dowso, the Mug here, he put it on the Barefoot Twitter. He said, people, what do you think about the jingle? And he put it up on the Twitter. And what were the results like, Mug?
Oh, I think we had about 68 responses, and I think about 88% or so are in the affirmative. So the punters have well and truly spoken, and the jingle is back, and it's here to say.
Tiger Gribble is back, and a little bit like Round the Twist. The jingle doesn't go out of fashion. You know how Round the Twist, it just doesn't go out of fashion. And same with the Tiger Gribble. He's a good Tigers man, and he's back on the show. So it's great to have it back.
It's timeless. Well, Logical, you and I are back for another year, as we've spoken on the last couple of podcasts. And I thought it might be important just to remind the listeners of who we're dealing with here. So, I know I've said this before, a very modest man when it comes to your punting, but you've literally been in this caper for almost 16 years now. Would I be right in saying so?
Yeah, yep. Been betting and trading AFL for quite a long time. And
how out of those years that you've been punting yourself, how many of those years would you say that you've returned a positive result?
Oh, maybe, I don't know, 16 maybe.
Yeah, I think you do know. I think it's 16 out of 16. And out of those 16 out of 16, how many would you say have been an above 10% return on investment?
I wouldn't be able to tell you right now, but it's been, ups and downs over the years, and back early days it was a lot easier. I used to get, was betting smaller and into less efficient markets and could get margins of around 20%. But then in recent years, it's still getting a try to aim to get around that 10% mark, and I think that's very achievable still in the current market.
Excellent. And I guess myself, obviously a friend of yours, and on our many surf trips together, we would talk about punting and so forth. And I guess I've just tried to apply myself over the years to learn some of the things that you've taught me, and I guess in doing so have become a profitable punter myself. So I'm probably more from that mug in the stands type of view, but still take my punting very, very seriously, and have been able to turn myself into that person that, perhaps just had one or two bets here or there that, wasn't a great return into, taking some of the learnings from yourself and going into it.
It's been a big journey you've been on over the last 4 or 5 years to come from where you were to where you're now. Now you're on a podcast talking about AFL punting. And for long-term time listeners of the show who've been listening for 3 or so years, they would have known that at the start it was just AFL. And then this year we've brought on NRL, and what a great addition that's been.
And let's talk about Benedict for a moment, because the Pope in round one has just gone bang. So he tipped up 3 lines on the podcast last week, and all of those 3 lines came in, depending where you sat on the Brisbane Broncos line, but he did tip up the 8.5, and that one came in at 8. So some tremendous tipping there, and for the mailbag listeners, for the mailbag subscribers as well, for those people that were able to subscribe, they would have had a fantastic first weekend on the punt. So congratulations and well done, I guess, to the Pope for getting us off to a great start.
Yeah, I think he tipped up the Storm, he tipped up the Warriors, and he tipped up the Broncos. Yeah. And I think we said the head-to-head multi was around that $14 or $15 mark, which nearly got home. And then if you had taken all 3 lines, you would have got the sweets. So great start from him.
Well, I know there was only NRL on the weekend, Logical, but did we see any bad beats?
Yeah, well, I think if you'd taken the Broncos late at the 7.5, I know when the Pope tipped it up, it was 8.5, but if you'd taken that at 7.5, they were 16-0 up, and they were dominating the game, and even all through the second half, really, they maybe looked like they could lose the game, but it never looked like they were going to get beaten at the line. And then, a garbage try in the 39th minute in the second half and the conversion to go with it and they covered the line. So if you're on that 7.5, I think that was a fairly bad beat for the weekend.
Yeah, we'll cop that. All right, mate. Well, it's a big week for us because we got the AFL starting. Benedict will be in a little bit later to talk NRL. Are you ready to do some games?
Let's do it.
Thursday night, we're back at the MCG for the first time in a long time, and it's the season opener, the big clash between Richmond and Carlton. Logical. It's a huge game for many reasons. We're back at the G. Footy's back in Melbourne. We're looking forward to it. Do we have any interest from a betting perspective? I guess that is the question. I'll just throw this one to you, Logical. This game is probably the lowest line that we've seen in this game, this opener for some time. And it poses the question, I guess, have Richmond tailed off or have Carlton got that significantly better to justify that line movement? One thing that I find is interesting in this one here is this line is pretty similar to the Richmond-St Kilda game in the semi-final last year. And are Carlton better than that? And considering Richmond are back at the MCG as well. So your thoughts on this one?
You're right about being a big game. And I thought I'd be sitting in the stands watching it and maybe not even having a punt and just enjoying the theatre of being back at the footy. But tickets were red hot today. I couldn't get a ticket.
Wow.
I was tapping away, so no luck with the tickets. But in terms of views on the game, one thing to not forget about last season and this season is that the games are 80%, 20% longer again this year, and Richmond get better as games go on.
Of course.
So there's a factor there around that. That's the difference between the St Kilda a little bit, that St Kilda line last year and this Carlton line. I thought Carlton finished off the season really well last year, or okay last year. They've got a lot of big men out this year. I think like Curnow, Mackay, McGovern, De Koning.
And is Mackay, is that confirmed? Has that been confirmed? Mackay's not going to come in, or we just think he's maybe...
I don't know. Maybe he might play, but still they can't all be right.
Yeah, I agree.
Or he might not be a little bit underdone. Richmond have really got a strong team. I think Hooley's the only one really missing. He's surprisingly got a sore calf from the grand final, which really interesting. It must have been a severe calf and, fair effort of him to continue to play on during the grand final. But, yeah, they've got a real full list. Carlton got a lot of injuries. So, across, when I put all that together and the longer games, I'm just thinking I'm not going to have a bet here. I probably would have been looking at Carlton based on last year's ratings, but now I'm not going to be betting on the match.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this one. We've seen these lines be a lot higher, but Richmond have never really smashed the line in this game either from my memory in recent times. Carlton have always been pretty plucky in that first sort of season opener. So I think it is one of those ones where you just sit back and enjoy the show. And if I had to have a lean, it's probably to the Tigers just with the strength of their team. There was a bit of talk about do they emotionally drop off with all of this Dimmer Hardwick stuff, and I just don't think there's too much sign of that, to be honest. I was speaking to someone actually inside the sanctum the other day, and he said the boys are cherry ripe, bursting to go. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for them, and I think Richmond get the win, but probably not a lot of value. And
it's interesting you talk about previous encounters. Last year's encounter, that round one game was one of the strangest games I've ever seen. It was the first time we'd never seen crowds, and they didn't have crowd audio. And it was just an eerie watch, wasn't it? And it was a shootout. I think it was one of the highest scoring games of the year. No teams didn't really know what to do. So it's sort of you almost discount that game in a way. It was a really strange
Blues
game.
Probably should have got back into about 9 points there right near the end. They looked like they were going to come back and almost steal it there for a little bit. And that, I think it was a final margin of about 24 points, which was probably a false margin in the end because there was a goal right on the death, I'm pretty sure, by Rioli. But anyway, I think we're saying no betting on that one, so let's move on to the next.
Yes, the Western Bulldogs, or Collingwood versus the Western Bulldogs at the MCG again on the Friday night. This game has been pick'em most of the run-in, and then today there's been a move to the Dogs, and sort of the market's now got the Dogs at around that $1.80 mark. How do you see that, Mug?
I was a little bit neutral on this particular one. News of the side, like the conjecture around side bottom, I was forced to have a little tester previous, just because if side bottom is out of that team, he's a massive loss for them. So I just thought that was worth a little push at the plus money there. Look, I'm probably not as excited about this game. I think you're fairly excited about this one. I think the Pies bat pretty deep. Western Bulldogs, great midfield, but I've always shown a bit of respect for the Pies. So yeah, nothing significant from me here, but I know you're quite excited about this
Well, there's
one.
going to be a bit of heat in the contest. The Pies supporters are going to be booing Treloar, even though it wasn't his fault that he left the club. You know what the Pies supporters like. They're going to be booing him.
No doubt.
So there's going to be spite in the contest, and so Collingwood lose Treloar, Dogs gain Treloar. Collingwood lost Stephenson and Phillips as well. Dogs didn't really lose any big key cattle, I think, from last year. I thought late last year the Dogs were going better than the Pies. They won a final and then lost a final, and they lost their first final to St Kilda narrowly. And then the Pies beat West Coast and then got smashed by Geelong. Pies have had a bit of a tumultuous off-season. And so I sort of think that Dogs should be strong favourites here, like around that 6 point range. So I'm still keen on the Dogs at $1.80. Love the pick 'em, but I'd still be backing them now. So
fantastic. Well, there's one for the listeners straight away. The logical our man is in on the Dogs. And a reminder to the listeners out there as well that this season you can get Logical's tip-ups. He's just given a great one there about the Dogs, but there are a lot of other tips that come through closer to game time that we obviously can't share all with you as we're doing this on a Tuesday. So there will be more tip-ups as the week progresses. And Cam sends those out via notification through the Mailbag app directly to your phone, tells you how much you need to bet, how much or what the odds are, etc. And you're going to get all of his plays for this weekend and also throughout the season. So go to the mailbag.com.au. That's the best place to purchase Cam's tipping package, and you're going to have a guiding hand all through the season on all of the different bets that he has throughout the year.
And I think probably the most exciting part about the Mailbag this year is we've added a new product, and we'll be looking at SGMs for $9.99 a week. You can get just over $1 a game. You can get a tip on most games for an SGM, and for those who really love an SGM. Want to have some engagement in the game, we'll be picking out the value in those SGMs that different bookmakers have, and so it's a really exciting new product.
Fantastic. All right,
and that's brought to you by the Barefoot.
That is courtesy of the Barefoot. So let's talk the next big game. We're talking Essendon versus my mob, Van Nister. We're going Essendon versus Hawthorn, Marvel Stadium, Saturday night. I think this one is. We've opened up at around about 7.5 line, and we've had some movement into the 5.5. How do you see this one, Logical?
Do you know what my best tip for this game is, Mug? Is whatever you do, is the team that wins this week, don't get overexcited about their form and get against
them on the next week. Yeah,
get against them at the week.
Yeah,
because these two teams are really poor teams.
Yep,
they've both got a lot of injuries. They've both had bad off seasons with trades, and they were both pretty poor last year.
Yeah, and geez, I went back and watched the AFL mini the other night of Hawthorn versus North Melbourne. Oh my goodness, we're in for a long year. That was some horrible defending. I was like, who is that guy in the 28? And then I realised that it's Hardigan. He's like a big recruit from Adelaide. I was like, Jesus, we're in a lot of strife here. I do not like the Hawks here at all. I think the Hawks look terrible. I'm not sure what part of the ground we could actually put our stake in the ground and say we own against, and I know it's Essendon and they've got their own problems, but I do see their midfield being a lot better than ours. And to be honest, I was really surprised that this one opened up at 7.5. I've taken some 7.5 myself against my own team, and I couldn't put you off taking 5.5 either, to be honest.
Oh, how times have changed. The guy who doesn't back against his own team. There's some real players that have really snuck under my guard that have left the Hawks too, like Henderson. He was a really key player for you not long ago. You lost Frawley, lost Stratton. You've lost a lot of
experience.
Yeah. Sisley's injured. Smith's gone. Mitchell and Wingard can't be fully fit. They've had interrupted pre-seasons, even if they do play. They're not. I don't think they're locks to play. Essendon have got their own troubles with injuries as well. But I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that if anything, Essendon should be favourites here.
Yep.
So I'm very keen on the plus.
I made it doing my lines. I made it a pick'em, and I haven't seen anything in the minis that would make me change that opinion. I think Essendon have got one thing that we lack in spades, and that's speed. At least Essendon move the ball with speed, which I think with the new conditions is going to give them an edge on us. The other thing, this is a Marvel Stadium. We hate it down there. The Bombers will love it. They're going to get a full house down there, and
50% full house.
Well, 50% of the full house, but they make a bit of noise, those Essendon fans, and I just can't have us as favourites either. So,
yep, good to see we're in agreement there.
And the last game we're going to talk about today is GWS versus the Saints, and on a week-to-week basis, we're going to talk the main games. The big games and also the games that we have a betting interest in. And this was a game of interest for myself, the GWS versus Saints, because I thought that line was way off. That opener of, I think there was some 8.5 out there and some 7.5. You know, it's interesting. You look at the end of last season, the Saints go off in that game against GWS in the last in round 18, so that's the last game of the year, at -5.5, and they absolutely pumped GWS in that game. Then over the off-season, I think GWS have had a shocker. They've lost Williams and Cameron, and they've also got Whitfield injured as well. So they lose some key. On the same time, St Kilda bring in some really good personnel, and back at Giant Stadium, I'll cop that. Yep. So there's an advantage there to GWS, but +7, +8.5. I just couldn't have that logical. I got stuck into that. Really disappointed now about the outs for St Kilda. Really disappointed because it's taken a bit of the air out of that balloon.
Yep.
First of all, we had Rowan Marshall, then we had Paddy Ryder, and now we got Max King. So, in all honesty, I couldn't be tipping the listeners into going into that game. But I tell you what, I was so keen on it before those outs. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think I agree with the first part of exactly what you said. Those key outs aren't ideal, but I think Paddy was tailing. You know, like Paddy's not going to be a key player for Saints this year, and you know he's had his injury troubles. Rowan Marshall, I think, is an up and coming gun.
Yep.
I'll be waiting to see the teams, but I'd be angling if I'm looking for a bet. It'd be looking to be on the Saints. But I'll have a look at the teams and then make a call. Yeah,
excellent. Alrighty, that wraps us up for the AFL. Now we're going to go into the NRL. Before we do so, quick shout out to a fellow tipster on Twitter, the Trend Better. He runs a fantastic competition to engage the punters each year, where he runs a line competition. So jump into Twitter, get in touch with the Trend Better, and he runs a good competition.
Much fairer way to tip that with the line betting.
But on to NRL.
Okay, and now here we are on to NRL. And last week, the Pope made his debut on the Barefoot, and it was we discussed earlier, it was an absolute ripper. Benny, we've gone over those 3 tips that you tipped last week, all 3 covered, and the 3 head-to-heads almost got home as well. One thing I noticed last week on the Barefoot and also on the mailbag was you were really selective. Round 1, really, really selective. That worked well. Back again this week. Really looking forward to seeing what you've got this week and your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cam. Interesting first week. Probably confirmation bias a little bit. Top 4 seems that was predicted at the start of the year seems to be panning out that way, and a little bit of the haves and have-nots in the competition. 6 teams clear from the rest, seemingly.
Yeah, I know last week you tipped Canberra for the flag, and I know they did have a big win, but you did mention to me yesterday that they weren't so impressive. Have you changed your views there on Canberra, or do you still think that was just a bit of an anomaly?
Yeah, more the latter. I think more of an anomaly. I think round 1, a little bit clunky, getting a feel for each other. As I touched on last week, Hodgson back is big, so they've probably restructured how they're going to play. Bit of a mulligan round 1 on that. I think they've still got away with the win. They'll only get better.
Still got away with the win, and good teams can do that. That's probably not too bad a start to the season. You want to be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, a couple of examples of that over the weekend. Penrith won comfortably. They were probably in third gear most of the match as well. So some of these teams will only get better despite some big scorelines that went their way.
Yeah. Storm, I think it's 5,675 round one wins since the introduction of them into the NRL. Like, they just don't lose round one, do they?
No, they don't. Certainly, I think 21st century certainly haven't lost in round one. So 19, 20 years it's going to be. So they know how to start the year flying, and they flew out of the blocks like 22-0 after 20 minutes. They jumped South. So first set, they went 90 metres down the other end. They caught South off guard, and they probably weren't great the rest of the game, to be honest. We might dive into that. But they last 50 minutes, they weren't super impressive, but did enough early, leading 22-0.
Considering all that and the fact that probably anyone that I respect on NRL that I spoke to all liked or listened to, all liked the Storm, I'm surprised that price held up so much that it went off the price it did.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Movement went early, actually, earlier than I anticipated. So Wednesday, South went favourites and got back to pick them in betting parlance by Thursday morning. And then it stayed stagnant the rest of the day pretty much. I thought there'd be more fluctuations throughout the course of Thursday afternoon and leading the game, but stayed pretty solid at pick 'em. So that was a bit of a surprise.
Yep. Yeah, and before we get on to your tips, which I'm eagerly looking forward to, a couple of big stories this week in the NRL. Coach Payten bagging one of his good players.
Yeah, he set the stall out early, Todd. First game as coach of Cowboys, come over, a lot of raps on him coming from the Warriors, what he did with them last year, interim in the last half of the year, being in Australia, and they overachieved. And he got a lot of the kudos for that. He's gone up to North Queensland with big raps. A lot of people expect him to go better than certainly how the market thinks they'll go. And they lost round one, and he's gone to the post-match press conference and called out Jason Taumalolo, probably top 10, maybe top 5 player in the game for defensive effort from Marcus. So interesting tactic from Todd.
That's his first game coach for the Cowboys, and he's gone whack.
Gone whack, called him out in the media. So some people loved it, some people didn't, depending on probably your angle, journalist v ex-player in the media. There was differing sides, but be interesting to see what happens this week.
It's real Malcolm Blight style. Can go well, or can really backfire. Other interesting thing I noticed was Daily M voting, and Tedesco didn't get the major votes for the Daily M.
No, this is hard to defend. Dicko went hard at Daily M last week, the voting process, and he proved right in round one. Tedesco scores a hat trick, dominates the whole match. First touch of the ball, he's taken a bomb to score, and he's third best player on the ground, according to Billy Moore, the Daily M voter. So
I was going to say, we do know who it was. Yeah, so there's a name there that people can send their hate towards.
They do. So I'd imagine Billy's social media might not be the best place to look at this week. So I'd steer clear if I was Billy Moore.
Billy might be a bit nervous next time he votes. All right, let's get on to this week's games. First game you want to look at, Para v Melbourne Storm. Storm again on the Thursday night, which is great for all us Melburnians. Storm's are flat 6 favourites. What are your thoughts there?
I'm going to flip the switch from last week, Cam. I was very strong on Storm last week. I like Para at this price. Early season, I, again, go to the ratings. I don't rate Para that far removed from Melbourne at this point of the year. That separation might occur, but at home, weather around in Sydney, the converted try, and 6 is a big number in league, either side of that. So it's sort of hedging bets in the market at the moment. That's moved today too. That was 6.5, which that half point's significant of where the market might be moving. So
yep, I'd
be thinking early bet here. This, I think, is going to go off closer to 4.5, 5.5 come Thursday. So that's the angle there. As I said, that Para's 6th best team in the comp. So Melbourne, despite the strong start, the last 50 minutes they were somewhat clunky. They wobbled a little bit, which sort of touched on last week. Post Cameron Smith, how they handle the tight moments might be a watch, and there was some signs that not everything's quite right there who they go to. So yeah, at home, Para different side at Bankwest. So I think this is a good bet.
Yeah, like it. And you said that 6 is such a key number. +6. If it went to +5.5, would you just be saying it's still a bet or not a bet?
I'd be steering clear. Yeah. That's huge. I'd be taking them head to head at this point too. I think we'll probably touch on this throughout the season, but the matches, the way games are played is very different now to 2019 pre-rule changes. So the arm wrestle with these starts greater than converted try was bigger. This now it's more a head-to-head type angle. I think the arm wrestle's out. Teams have to score points, and otherwise you're going to get blown away. But so I'd be thinking head to head. But that in a game like this where you got 2 top 6 teams, that side of that number at home is significant.
Top 6 at home in the wet. I like it.
Yeah, a lot of factors. Early year.
The second game that we're going to talk about was the Warriors and the Knights. The Knights, it's a Friday night up at Central Coast Stadium. The Knights are -1.5 here, or probably not really actually. It's close to pick 'em. $1.85 head-to-head the Knights and $1.95 the Warriors.
Another match has moved already this week. This was +2.5 yesterday. So heading Warriors' way. Again, I just can't have it. Thought Warriors were undervalued in the market last week and leading that way again. I think they should probably be favourites here. They're rated similar to Newcastle. Newcastle winning comfortably against Canterbury last week, but that mirrored over the cracks a little bit. The couple of injuries they got out of, they were clunky. Warriors really good, Central Coast, so I think they should be favourites. So the $1.95 head-to-head is very much a bet at this stage. Again, think likely to move closer to Friday. I'd be getting on early here.
Yeah, so it worked well last week, so going for the Warriors again.
Yep, same ground, similar concept, underdogs, which I don't think that is correct. So very similar status to their match versus Titans.
Yep, similar reason and similar prices to last week in a way.
Yeah, a lot of similarities to their game last Saturday.
All right, and the last game you wanted to speak about was the Sharks v the Raiders on the Sunday, and it's Sunday at 6:15 at Jubilee Stadium. We have the Raiders -6.5 favourites away from home here. What are your thoughts here?
Similar to the first game, many respects that we spoke about, Parramatta v Melbourne. That number of +6.5, I like for the away underdogs this early in the year. Cronulla, probably the team that impressed me most last week, is re-rating yesterday or start of the week. They're the ones that have improved most of my ratings. They're sort of lucky in some respects against Dragons, but structurally how they played and a couple of slight changes last year. A couple of players seem to have improved fairly significantly. And I think the +6.5 at home, weather is around in Sydney this week too. So the same factor from the Parramatta game is relevant here as well. Just like the big start at +6.5. Again, we touched on Canberra. Might be a softish start to the year for them. They're not quite firing on all cylinders, which I'm sure they'll be fine long term. But short term, home underdogs, that greater than converted try, wet weather around, a lot of factors that I like for Cronulla in that one.
Cool, I like it. So just in summary there, this week, you like Parramatta, New Zealand Warriors, and the Sharks versus the Raiders.
Yeah, I do. I'd be taking head-to-head in the Parramatta and Cronulla as well. I think they're good value at the price at around $2.75, so I'd be head-to-head for those, the underdogs as well.
And as we spoke about earlier, on the mailbag, you can catch the Pope's tips. He had a great start to the season last week, quite selective, but there was still some real gold there. So jump on board and grab that.
Yeah, probably keep an eye early in the week too. I'd say Wednesday there'll be something dropping there, predicting market moving against where we want it to go. So I'd be keeping an eye out Wednesday.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Benny. And as we said earlier, it's been a great addition to the Barefoot so far.
Pleasure. Look forward to round 2.